Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of the show. We will begin with the latest as far as Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. First of all, there is the death in custody of prominent Kashmiri leader Altaf Shah, son-in-law of Sayyid Ali Gillani. He was in captivity since quite some time and he was not given the proper treatment at the right time, and he was taken to the hospital at the very last moments. Now, grief has outpoured across Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and also in Pakistan, where Shehbaz Sharif, our premier, has also tweeted about being deeply grieved at the passing of the prominent Kashmiri leader. Also, Pakistan has categorically rejected the remarks that have been made by the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi about the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir during a public rally in Gujarat, in which he had said that the Kashmir issue had somehow been resolved. The statement has arrived as a result and as a rebuke of this statement, highlighting this statement and also saying how irresponsible this statement by the Indian Premier has been in the current state of affairs, where not only are the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir under the constant supervision and barbarity of the 900,000 plus security forces, but they are also being denied their right to self-determination. This is going to be our first segment. Our second segment concerns the floods and the latest situation and the fact that the international organizations are realizing that Pakistan needs aid as much as possible at the earliest. Now, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has also appealed for $65.8 million urgent fund to help more than 650,000 refugees and members of their host communities affected by the recent devastating floods in Pakistan. This and more as far as the latest updates on the floods in Pakistan and how the international body is coming together to help Pakistan in this day of crisis, in this hour of crisis, is going to be our second story. Our third story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Malala Yousufzai, a Nobel laureate, has arrived in Pakistan today. She is visiting her home country after 4 years to travel to areas that have been devastated by the unprecedented monsoon flooding and also to meet the flood victims. This is going to be our third story. And our final story, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be about Palestine and also the continued barbarities on the Palestinian people by the Israelis. In the latest spate, a 12-year-old Palestinian boy died on Monday after being shot and injured during a raid in the month of September. This and so much more is going on in Palestine, just like in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the martyrdom, the death of the Kashmiri leader Altaf Shah, who is the son-in-law of Sayyid Ali Gillani, in custody in India, and he is not the only Kashmiri leader who are still in custody as far as Kashmiri leaders are concerned. The Kashmiri movement continues unabated. More in the following report.
Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the highest militarized zone in the world, has rarely seen a peaceful day under brutal Indian occupation. India has tried every measure of suppression to curtail the legitimate demand of the Kashmiri people, their right to self-determination. Illegally detained senior leader of all parties Hurriyat Conference, Altaf Ahmad Shah, has embraced martyrdom in Indian custody. Altaf Ahmad Shah has been languishing in New Delhi's infamous Tihar jail after his arrest in 2017, and Indian authorities denied him basic facilities, including medical care. Prime Minister Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif expressed deep grief at passing of prominent Kashmiri leader Altaf Shah and stated that custodial killings are a norm in Modi's India. Responding to Indian mischievous designs, Pakistan has categorically rejected the remarks made by Indian Prime Minister Modi about Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir during a public rally in Gujarat. The Foreign Office called out Indian leader for making delusional statements about having resolved the dispute unilaterally. Indian leadership must deliver on their commitments to the Kashmiris. Despite clear UN resolutions that prescribe a free and impartial plebiscite for the final disposition of the dispute, India has not only illegally occupied the territory but is also guilty of egregious human rights violations.
Kashmiri leader Dr. Mujahid Gillani joins us online. Gillani Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Gillani Sahab, first of all, deepest condolences on the passing away, on the martyrdom of Mr. Shah. Not only was he a prominent Kashmiri leader, but also he was languishing in jail like so many other Kashmiri leaders, and he had become a sign of the freedom for all those Kashmiris who are languishing in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, whether under the custodial authorities of the armed forces or in jail. The outpouring is immense, the outpouring is massive. How does the Kashmiri leadership see the martyrdom and the death of Mr. Shah?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are, sir.
Thank you, Omar, for taking me once again on this very grave and serious issue. First of all, the most important thing is we need to understand who Altaf Ahmad Shah was. For once, if you take him as a single individual, we need to understand that Altaf Shah himself was a freedom fighter. Even before becoming the son-in-law of Sayyid Ali Gillani, the great stalwart leader of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Altaf Shah was a very renowned youth activist who actually gave his time, who actually spent a lot of time telling the youth that we are under an illegal Indian occupation. But after he got related to Sayyid Ali Gillani, after he became the son-in-law of Sayyid Ali Gillani, he actually became more active towards the freedom struggle and was essentially considered to be the right hand of Sayyid Ali Gillani in the all-parties Hurriyat conference. Back in 2017, am I still audible?
Yes, you are. Kindly continue.
Sorry, okay. So, as I was saying, back in 2017, Altaf Shah, along with several leaders, was transferred to the New Delhi's Tihar jail. And from here on begins a new chapter, another chapter. Altaf Ahmad Shah becomes an icon of the Kashmiri freedom struggle. And today, as we understand that he has been martyred in a custodial murder, we need to understand that Altaf Ahmad Shah is not going to be the only leader who has been done so. After 2019, essentially, India has targeted 4 of our political prisoners. That has included Ghulam Ahmad Butt, Ashraf Khan Sehrai, the great Sayyid Ali Gillani himself, and today, Altaf Ahmad Shah Sahab. But various other leaders, Yasin Malik, Sayyida Asian Rabi, Masrat Alam Sahab, Dr. Qasim Faktu, who are languishing behind the bars, are also not well. Our leaders.
But Dr. Saab, tell me one thing. Where are the international human rights organizations? Where are the champions of human rights, those countries in the West that champion the rights when it comes to Ukraine? What happens when it comes to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
Let's be very honest today, Omar. I am actually disappointed. I'm actually disappointed since I come from the same family. And it pains me to say that I have seen my elders, I have seen my leaders behind bars, and nobody speaks about them. Nobody in the prosperous world, the people who actually hold the beacon of humanity, who also essentially, whenever there is a violation of animal rights, they speak up against it. But whenever it comes to Kashmir, I have always seen them mum and silent. But I believe that this is the point, this is the time. The sacrifices of Kashmiris, the sacrifices of our elders, the sacrifices of our leaders is something that is going to sow a seed. And this seed is what we need to water. This seed is what we need to nourish so that it becomes a proper, strong plant. The world may not speak for us. It is for us, Kashmiris, and the people who advocate for us. Pakistan, the other countries who speak up for Kashmir, they need to make something beyond statements now. They need to do something.
So, Dr. Gillani, what you mean to say is that the onus of responsibility to now gather together and to agitate and to revolt against these barbarities that are being continuously perpetrated on the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir lies solely on the people themselves, because as we see things happening across the world is not coming for the people in Kashmir. Yes, they are taking out a lot of important reports, they are making a lot of important statements, but those statements and those reports are not really translating into any form of either pressure tactic on India or action.
Absolutely. See, India is always a trigger-happy nation over there. And essentially, since the Hindutva regime that is now dominating the mainland India, we need to understand that India really doesn't need to pull the trigger to kill a Kashmiri. Today we have seen it. Today we have seen that Altaf Ahmad Shah was denied appropriate and timely medical treatment, and that led to the spread of the renal cell carcinoma that he had, and we lost a hero. Our leaders, they have always having some aches and pains, and that those aches and pains perhaps may be a sign of early cancer or maybe a sign of some early disease. And
True.
India essentially makes it certain that these diseases, these aches and pains are not treated until it sprouts to be a terminal disease. The onus,
All right,
yes, it lies on the
Dr. Saab,
people.
our Premier Shehbaz Sharif Saab says, also a lot of other leaders have said that custodial killings have become a norm under Narendra Modi's India. Is there any way to stop such custodial killings from within India? Because as you yourself have pointed out, that the West is kind of shirking away from putting any kind of pressure on India. And its latest example, of course, of Mr. Altaf Shah proves that the West does not want to involve itself in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in matters that are already controversial, because there are so many resolutions in the United Nations on this very issue. Now that the custodial killings are continuing, now that a lot of people are still in jails, a lot of Kashmiri leaders are still in jails, you've yourself pointed out to some very important names. People are not allowed to live their lives peacefully and with the due dignity that they deserve. What should be done by the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir? What moves should they now make?
See, we need to take a leaf out of the Kashmir book, out of the whole Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir dynamics. And that leaf will be particularly the political prisoners at this point in time. If we were able to persuade Germany to issue a statement in favor of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, I believe, what's the problem? Why can't we do it for the whole European continent? Why can't we do it for the African countries? Why can't we do it for the other members of the United Nations?
True, true.
One single statement for Germany actually agged India so much that India had to produce a counter statement for it. And this is what Pakistan needs to do. This is what the other brotherly nations who are advocating the case of Kashmir need to do. Take a leaf out of the Kashmir book. Let's not discuss the whole Kashmir dynamics. Let's not discuss the resolutions, but at least lower the human cost of our freedom struggle. Get our political prisoners out of the jails. Get them back into the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Aren't there international laws on custodial killings, sir? Don't you feel that the Kashmiri leaders can take this up with the international authorities?
They very much have. Let's be honest about it. The Kashmiris themselves, at least as far as the Kashmiris themselves are concerned, they have already done so. We understand of the Stokewhite, one of the organizations based in UK. We also understand that an international trial was held last year in Bosnia, and that actually implicated the General Bipin Rawat, this previous Chief of Army Staff of the Indian Army. And this is important. The Kashmiris have been producing files and dossiers themselves. They have been reporting from the ground, and they have been presenting it to the people who matter in UK, in US, or in the United Nations itself. Even this time as well, we understand that in the HRC, United Nations, it was the Kashmiris who spoke up about Kashmir and the illegal atrocities that India is committing inside Kashmir. So yes, for once, we need to agree, Kashmiris are being given the space. Kashmiris are being brought forward to put up their own case through their own mouth and through their own language.
Dr. Gillani, also, with all these custodial killings going on, the Kashmiri leaders languishing in jails and not being given proper humane treatment, why in your world, in your point of view, is the world reluctant to downgrade a country like India from a democracy to an autocracy?
Quite right once again, Omar. But see, once again, I believe we have failed to project our case in the sense of a trilateral or even a pentad kind of an issue. It's not just a territorial dispute between Pakistan and India, but it involves the humans of Jammu and Kashmir. It involves the United Nations itself, who had presented a solution to this particular issue almost 70 years back. So this is something that we need to bring up, and this is something we need to tell the world, that Altaf Shah was not just a Hurriyat leader. He was a father of a daughter, of a son. He was the husband of a wife. And he was a patient of renal cell carcinoma. And you cannot deny healthcare provision even to the worst of your enemies. He
True.
was not a murderer, not a rapist.
True.
He was just a voice of dissension. And this is what India is doing.
And he
India
is
is
only transferred to a hospital hours before his death. I mean, this is the height of
exactly.
inhumane behavior. When you know a person is suffering from a disease as terminal as cancer, the least you can do is give him the proper treatment.
Exactly as they did with Ashraf Khan Sehrai Saab. He was transferred to the hospital right at the last moment, essentially, just to declare his death. And this is what they did with Altaf Shah Saab as well. And the family was not even allowed to meet him, to see him, to actually be there in his last moments. India essentially did the same with Sayyid Ali Gillani Saab as well. We know the last rituals, the burial ritual of Sayyid Ali Gillani Saab was actually never performed in a proper way.
True.
This is India's ritual. This is India's proper plan, and India has been
This
taking
is
up this
India's
plan
true
after
face, Dr.
2019.
Gillani. This is India's true face as far as the so-called democratic, pluralistic India is concerned. Now, you talked
Absolutely.
about the German foreign minister's statement as far as Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. We all have seen also the spokesperson of the Indian External Ministry, Arindam Bakshi, who also reacted, and our Foreign Office then also gave a very swift statement on that. I'd like to refer to another very recent statement that the Indian Premier made about the resolution of the Kashmir issue. Sorry to be very blunt, but how dare he?
You're right. You're right. And it's not just the Indian premier. I believe we should also talk about Amit Shah, who visited the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir just a few days back. And let's be very honest, the forces over there, the terrorist forces over there, made sure to gift him the bodies of 5 Kashmiri youth right on the day of his visit to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. They made it sure that Amit Shah's visit is garlanded with the bodies of Kashmiri youth, that Amit Shah gets to see and gets to portray a normalcy in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And Amit Shah's visit as well this time was actually to divide the Kashmiris. Previously, when he had visited Kashmir, he had offered the people that will be giving you jobs, we will be giving you education and developmental projects. But this time, he essentially targeted the Bakarwal and the Pahadi community of the Kashmiris, telling them that, okay, let's put the main Kashmiris aside. It's actually you people I have come for. So India essentially is now once again trying to divide and rule. India is trying to tell the Kashmiris that, you are a part of us. Definitely, Kashmir is an integral part of India in a way. And this is what Amit Shah tried to sell in his visit this time. So, be it the premier or be it Amit Shah's visit and his statements, I believe all have their flaws. All are essentially baseless, and India has essentially nothing to give it to the Kashmiris. And Kashmiris have only one demand from India, and that is the right to self-determination.
Nevertheless, despite all these inhumane treatments, human rights abuses that are going on a daily level since years, the West does not seem to take a very strong stand for the Kashmiri people. We understand, as we've discussed earlier in the show, that it is now up to the Kashmiri people and to some extent to Pakistan to highlight the atrocities at whichever level. And you've also said that the Kashmiris at different levels internationally, their voices are now actually and finally being heard. What is the next step now for the actual realization of the right to self-determination for the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
Once again, I would actually go to the Kashmir book. Instead of taking the whole dynamics of Kashmir at once, we have a lot of chapters to discuss about. And this is what was done in the UNHRC as well, talking about the political prisoners, talking about the pellet victims, talking about how India has been committing different human right violations in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir was the main phase that was taken up this time. So, for once, plebiscite, perhaps, yes, we do want it, but that is the end game. What we want at this point in time is to lower the cost of our freedom struggle. We are ready for it. We have been pushed against the wall. We are ready to give our lives, and we are doing so already. But the world needs to lower the cost of the freedom struggle. The world needs to know that this is not the only freedom struggle going on, and this has not been the only freedom struggle going on in the world for the past many decades, years, or centuries. The conscience needs to wake up. But today, I understand, and I bluntly tell you that I am disappointed. And I'm depressed in a way as well, because being from the ground, a ray of hope is what I need from the world, from Pakistan, and from the other brothers and brotherly nations who talk about Kashmir. I
Dr.
believe today
Gillani,
is your
Pakistan has
day.
always, Dr. Gillani, of course, my deepest condolences and our deepest condolences to you and your family as well. This said, Pakistan has always tried to highlight the issue of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and their right to self-determination, not since now, but since time immemorial. Pakistan has gone to the United Nations, Pakistan has gone to other international fora and has talked very bluntly about the Indian machinations against the people of the Held Valley, whether it be changes in the demographic situation, whether it be implementation of laws against the rights of the people of the Held Valley, and the list goes on and on. Now, Pakistan can only, do as much as it can politically, morally, diplomatically. The Kashmiris are also doing whatever they can at most. What is the tipping point? What is the boiling point before it becomes too late for the Indian government to handle the issue of Kashmir on its own? Because we've heard Dr. Gregory Stanton, head of Genocide Watch, talk about a situation of genocide that has already begun in India, that 200 million plus Muslims are at risk of being killed by the Hindus in our neighboring country, and there are so many other risks that have been pointed out by other human rights organizations as well. What is the tipping point?
See, Omar, you yourself being a Kashmiri know very well that the Kashmiris identify themselves by their land. Even if they are NRKs, non-resident Kashmiris, they still call themselves Kashmiris from the village, from that village, from this village of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We need to continue with that identity, and India is essentially trying to snatch that identity from us. The demographic terrorism that's taking place will essentially wipe us, will essentially exterminate any native Kashmiri that is living over there, and that will alter the results of plebiscite. This demographic terrorism, I believe, is the red line. This demographic terrorism is the point where everyone who talks about Kashmir and about plebiscite needs to stand up, because otherwise it might be very late to identify ourselves as Kashmiris.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mujahid Gillani Saab, to have joined us. Our deepest condolences again on the sad martyrdom of Altaf Shah Saab, son-in-law of Sayyid Ali Gillani, who was also a family member to you. And of course, Pakistan stands by you. Pakistan stands by its Kashmiri brethren who are being incarcerated, who are languishing in jails, who are being brutalized by the people, by the armed forces, by the government in India. We will stand and we will continue to stand by them diplomatically, morally and politically. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the flood situation in Pakistan and of course the different international organizations that point to aid that needs to arrive in Pakistan at the earliest before it's too late, and the amount of people that have been affected by these dastardly floods. More in the following report.
Pakistan is grappling with an unprecedented climate emergency which requires multilateral response and generous assistance. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has appealed for $65.8 million urgent fund to help more than 650,000 refugees and members of their host communities affected by recent devastating floods in Pakistan. Climate Change Minister Senator Sherry Rahman said that the World Bank has estimated a loss of $40 billion to Pakistan's economy as a result of the damage caused by recent cataclysmic floods. The United Nations General Assembly has adopted a resolution to express solidarity with Pakistan's government and people in the wake of recent devastating floods that inundated a third of the country. The consensus resolution also backed Islamabad's strengthening of emergency, relief, rehabilitation, reconstruction and prevention in the wake of recent climate catastrophe. The Population Council has recently launched a report which includes considerable granular data about vulnerabilities among flood victims, such as 5.1 million are children under the age of 5, 940,000 are senior citizens with special needs, and 610,000 are pregnant pregnant women. Deadly flooding has left a widening public health crisis that will draw attention to wealthy nations' responsibility for climate change at COP27. The world must change course and place climate change at the heart of policy making, otherwise an apocalyptic future awaits humanity.
Advisor to the Ministry of Finance, Dr. Khaqan Najeeb joins us online. Dr. Saab, it's a pleasure to have you on our show. Dr. Saab, so many international organizations point out towards the misery of the people and the worsening situation as far as the plight of the people in Pakistan is concerned. The demand for more aid for our country rises. Some of the organizations are rising to the occasion, others aren't. What should be the ultimate strategy for Pakistan and the international body as far as helping the people in need is concerned?
Omar, thank you for having me. It's always my pleasure to be on your show. Look, I mean, first we must always remember 1,700, close to that number is the death toll. Our injured are somewhere near 13,000. Our bridges that have gone down are more than 400, 13,000 kilometers of roads that have been damaged. 2 million households, 2 million houses have been damaged, and the livestock about 1.15 million. These numbers we must keep repeating, and 33 million people have been displaced. One third of Pakistan is underwater. Why do I keep repeating these figures? Because if we don't remember the kind of facts that have hit us, we will not be able to make the case and the narrative to the international community.
I understand.
So now let me come to what needs to be done. We have just done a preliminary damage need assessment, and that gives us a figure of about $28 billion to repair, provide relief, provide comfort to these people, to reconstruct, and eventually build something better. So, that's the initial assessment that has come through. By 15th of October, we will have a very in-depth analysis of where we stand in terms of the damages that have taken place. So that is the place to build. What we are seeing right now is that the World Bank has promised that they would reappropriate $2 billion. I mean, that's a good beginning. Maybe start off with that. But I think we need to tap the concessional windows with the multilateral. So we have to be very specific on that. One of the concessionary windows with the ADB on the 25th of October, we are going to be having a board meeting on Pakistan, where we are looking at $1.5 billion that may flow through to Pakistan in terms of what they call, you can call that a concessional facility, a brace facility. It's not concessional on the loans, but it's easier to get. So that money would flow in. That would be really, really helpful. So that's good. Now we are talking to the IMF. The Pakistan authorities are there. So we must look to the IMF to renegotiate in terms of not the program, but the macro framework for FY23. This is very, very important, Omar. The reason I say this is important is that the current framework would have to be altered to provide more relief out of the budget to the people of Pakistan who are suffering. More relief would have to be given on, for example, the petroleum development levy of 850 billion rupees that we have to collect. And some monies can come from other sources in terms of the non-tax revenue, but that reduces the overall inflation in the country. We also have to see that the growth will not be there of that kind. Agriculture growth would probably fall negative. We would be importing more cotton. Our exports would be hurt in that regard. So a complete revamp of a macro framework in which we actually know the picture for FY23 with the IMF so that they can redesign some of the harsh conditionalities which may have been okay before the flood.
I can understand the revamping of the macroeconomic structure that you've just ably pointed out to. How much is the will from organizations such as the IMF to actually comply with it?
So that's again a good point, and that onus again falls on us partly, how harsh we will negotiate, how hard we will negotiate, how a macro framework from our side would be strong enough to convince them that we are looking at an agriculture growth which is negative. We are looking at 1.2 million live stock damage, which was the bread and butter of these people. We are looking at importing cotton to the tune of $3 billion. We are looking to growth falling, less than 2%. These are our initial estimates. So we need a revamp of the macro framework. That revamp of the macro framework also would open us to concessional windows. When I say concessional windows, I don't mean windows which are just linked to delivering 3-monthly, yearly objectives, but some concessions that we can get. Then I understand Paris Club or bond or commercial. These are never the reschedulings that we should be looking for, but what we should be looking for is with the bilateral partners. What I mean is with countries, if we owed a certain amount of money, X, to a certain country, X, we may think of asking them to, take it further. Like, I'll give you an example. The G20 as an initiative did $3.7 billion of rescheduling for Pakistan during COVID. We are even harder hit than we were in COVID, both in terms of our macro framework, people, damage, infrastructure. So that's the other area that we should be looking at. And of course, that does not at all mean a default. All it means is a deferment of payment with the bilaterals. China is there. The other partners like France has been, willing. I'm very happy. We made a case at the UN. France said we will do a conference for you to put money together, and there we can, have that kind of initiative. Then itself, the UN response, UN has been forthcoming. Our UN Secretary General visited Pakistan, and whatever monies we could get as grants also, obviously. Then there is another thing, Omar, that we should be looking for, and that is important to me. And I think there we have not been able to move well because that framework has changed, and that's the INGOs, which have expertise to do this work. Hats off to our establishment, our army, our navy, our NDMA, our PDMA, provincial governments, all have done their bit. But, this is the world's moved to areas where, you do work in a very competent manner with a focus and more expertise in a particular area. Many INGOs across the world handle this kind of thing. And lastly, what I now really worry about and what bothers me is that what can we do with the WHO on the diseases that are likely to affect those people?
Are not likely to affect, are affecting as we speak. The scores of people, women, children that have been affected by the waterborne diseases, measles, malaria, and dengue, and so on and so forth, cholera, typhoid. You name it and the diseases are there.
So very rightly, right? So you need vaccines for these people. You need immediate pharmaceutical approach to these people.
You need clean water. You need proper sanitation. You need food that is clean. You need the proper, methodologies for all those pregnant women who are about to deliver. So that they can deliver in a safe and sanitary environment. There are so many needs for Pakistan, and Pakistan all alone by itself cannot deliver.
Omar, very rightly, we were facing a balance of payments challenge as we came in to the flood situation. Partly that was also driven by the fact that we had an exogenous shock, an external shock on terms of the oil going to $120 a barrel, and partly driven by our own circumstances, of course. And then we ended up with this. So you are right. So coming back to these diseases, so there we would need WHO, we would need to have funding from them. And I'm hoping that we can approach them and their reps come and see the situation and the INGOs come in. One other thing that you haven't maybe alluded to is the mental health issues that must have been there. Just think about it. You have a house around which water is surrounded and you're submerged for days at end. What kind of traumatic...
Or you've lost a loved ones, or you've lost your livestock, you've lost your land, your money, and maybe members of your family. You are devastated by it. The mental devastation is not seen physically, but it manifests itself in various forms.
Very, very rightly put. So let us give an example to the people of Pakistan to make them realize. Let's say I was going today and I had, God forbid, a massive accident, whether on the road in Pakistan or whether in the road in France. How much traumatic driving becomes for me past that. Just an accident. But imagine having lost a part of my family, or having been in water, having 5 to 6 livestock which were feeding, helping, and my crop destroyed. How much would that mentally damage me? Sometimes sitting outside the flood areas, I think it's very hard to realize these things. But just one accident, whether it's on a motorbike, whether it's on a bus that we are riding, whether it's on a car we are riding, hurts us mentally. Just imagine what those people. So the mental health help that we need to do
will be needed to be catered to as well, and on a broad spectrum. And I think the World Health Organization will have a primordial role to play, along with, of course, the medical facilities provided by Pakistan. There is a report by the United Nations and the Red Cross that talks about future heat waves and future calamities that are going to be more severe than the current ones that Pakistan is encountering. How should Pakistan stand up for it? How should Pakistan prepare itself for it?
No, that's a very good question. Before I go to it, I just want to, again, whenever I talk about this, I always make an appeal to our conscience of people like you and me, who have even 1,000 rupees to contribute, or 100,000 to contribute.
I always end my show with that, to help in whichever capacity you can, whether it be by texting to on 9999 to the Prime Minister's Fund, whether it be giving to the armed forces or the NGOs or even the philanthropists who are toiling to help those in need.
My family was saying that we should give away all our clothes that we don't use. But then we said that we may not only give the ones we don't use, we may give a bit more than the ones we may, have excess of. So that's an appeal that it really makes a difference, to these people. So that's one. Now, coming on to your last comment. Of course, we have to think about these things, and Red Cross is right in this regard, and we must be thinking about these things. What we need to realize here is that climate change has become like an aberration which keeps happening, which will keep. We may have a drought next year. We may have floods occurring. Pakistan has had floods consistently for the past decade or so, but it's become higher aberrations, and it's become very, very frequent now. So that is the resilience we need to look at. Now, resilient infrastructure, solving people's issues, these are local issues. And here I never want to be political, but I'm going to be political, because the role of the local government would become immensely important. We sitting in Islamabad as the federal government, or sitting in Karachi as the provincial government, or an INGO coming from outside, can do so much. It'll always be the local government which will create that there is water flowing out, there is sewage, there is proper laws implementation. That role would become very important. And of course, our overall regulations, our overall laws, our overall setup to build a green Pakistan is what we should be looking for.
But the fact remains that all of that, the rebuilding, the restructuring, the future proofing our country against all these calamities that could or might affect us in the weeks and the years to come, it all boils down to money also, doesn't it? Now, the UNDP talks about debt relief for Pakistan and other 53 other countries. Do you feel also that the world that is more or less engrossed in the Russia-Ukraine crisis or other crises of their own will finally be serious about this issue as well? Debt relief for 54 countries, including Pakistan, that are more or less encountering some form of climate change.
So, Omar, you have again pointed a very important point here. What we have seen over the last few days, over the last few months, is that there is certain donor fatigue. that has happened. That's a fact of life. Number two, what we have seen is that even the friendly countries have been there, but not to the extent that is needed. Number three, Ukraine war has sucked a lot of money that could have been spent otherwhere. Then we've also seen that the countries themselves, because of what has happened in terms of the energy crisis and the stagflation. Stagflation globally is where growth has slowed down, inflation has gone up, energy bills have gone up, so their countries' own balance sheets have shrunk. So their capacity to help has come down from what it was a few years ago. So that's the global picture that we are painting. It's not a very easy global picture, and it's also not going away in the immediate or even in the next a year or so. So we have to be conscious on a lot of things. One thing we haven't talked about is that what else we could do is conservation. That would save money that we spend on our import bill. And if we are able to save that money, that is the same money that we could use to rebuilding Pakistan.
That is true. Final question, Dr. Saab. I want a very, very short answer. Shari Rahman Saiba, the Minister for Climate Change, says we are still in the life-saving phase after 17 hard weeks. Now, the outsized impact of climate change on developing countries, is this going to also threaten the peace and stability of the entire world in the time to come? Short answer, sir.
So short answer is that the whole world should come together towards a green world, towards a world where we are not relying on fossil fuels for 82% of our energy needs even today. And that's the global picture that has to be set right. At a country level, we can't be reliant on importing fuels and LNG to run our energy. We must be reliant on the hydros, the sun, the air that we have in Pakistan, and be much more energy efficient as a country to rebuild this infrastructure, off-grid solutions.
But Dr. Saab, is the peace and stability of the world at stake as an outcome of the current crisis?
Of course, what you've seen in Sri Lanka is one example of that, right? Where they went into a distress, and when distress happens, things become unstable. And of course, it is threatened in a way where you don't want to have a country of Pakistan size, 230 million, with people in distress, which are 33 million. So what one would hope is that this distress is short-lived and we are able to help. The world is also able to help, and we are also able to rethink our development paradigm built on infrastructure that is local, on energy that is local, on solutions that are people-centric and at the doorstep through local governments in Pakistan.
All right, one-liner, COP27, 6th of November. Will it help Pakistan?
I would think so, because Pakistan is at the forefront of the climate damage that any country has seen in the past few months. So I am sure, I think the case is strong. I think we've been nominated as a vice chair also, if I'm correct.
Yes, you're right.
So, just think about it. Is that a good signal? That's probably a good signal that Pakistan is now going to be vice chair, so we can raise our voice. Now it's up to us to raise that voice vehemently, strongly, and take our case and move forward.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, Senior Economist and former advisor to the Ministry of Finance, to have joined us, to have talked to us on different facets of the current situation that Pakistan is engulfed in, of course, linked to economy, linked to money, linked to aid, because without money, without the aid, without the help from the international agencies, from the world body, Pakistan cannot move forward on its own. Pakistan needs all the help it can get, because what has happened, the devastation that has happened, is for no fault of Pakistan. Pakistan needs climate justice. Let's come to our last two stories very quickly. The first concerns Malala Yousufzai Sahiba, who is a Nobel laureate. We all know that. She's here in Pakistan. She arrived today. She's visiting her country after 4 years to travel to areas that have been devastated by these floodings and the floods. What she wants to do is to keep international attention focused on the impact of floods in Pakistan and to reinforce the need for critical humanitarian aid. This is, of course, part of the work that her NGO Malala Fund is doing, and to help those in need in Pakistan. Many people have come before her as well. Angelina Jolie was here, Antonio Guterres was here as well. And it's very important for people like these, people who are not only celebrities but known across the world, to highlight the atrocities so that a first-hand report or information can be given through these people to the entire world body. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, in Palestine, 12 people, a child of 12 has died of gunshot wounds from Israeli army raid. He was, of course, injured in September, and now he passed away, unfortunately. Now, Israeli fire has killed more than 100 Palestinians, making it the deadliest year in the occupied territory since 2015. I'm talking of 2022. Israel says the vast majority of those people who have been killed have been militants or stone throwers who were endangering the soldiers, but several civilians have also been killed in these encounters. Now, Israel says the arrest raids are meant to dismantle militant networks. Palestinians say the operations are aimed at strengthening Israel's 55-year-old military occupation of territories that they want for an independent state. The fight goes on, the fight from Israel to occupy Palestine, the fight from the Palestinians to get back the territories that belong to them. When will this fight end? What is the trigger point? Will the world finally maybe find a solution to this crisis as well as that in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir? We are waiting, we are listening. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories and segments that pertain to you, us and Pakistan. Stay safe and follow those, as I've talked with Dr. Khaqan Najeeb as well. I always end my show with that. Help those in need in whichever capacity you can, whether by sending a text on 9999 and contributing 10 rupees, whether it be by giving away your clothes, food, money to different charitable organizations, NGOs, the government agencies, or the armed forces. But do help. Our people need your support, your help. They are Pakistanis just like we are. Allah Hafiz.